we have to acknowledge the impact that COVID had. So 2 of those 5 years, are the pandemic years. And we have to acknowledge the fact that we weren't able to do in-person inspections for some time. When we resumed in-person inspections, we had to prioritize because we had a backlog from the suspension of inspections. And we prioritized the facilities that were non-compliant prior to the pandemic. Unfortunately, a lot of those facilities remained non-compliant. So we will see that they're in the news. You'll see a lot of the same facilities also continue to be non-compliant. Unfortunately, this has resulted in disruptions to our supply chain due to these quality shortcomings. So that's been one of the outcomes that we've also seen as a result of this.
What do you think are the key challenges when it comes to compliance in India?
I think one of the things, and it's been highlighted here at this conference this week as well, is quality culture and ensuring that firms implement quality cultures that can retain a consistent state of compliance. A lot of times facilities are at a marginal state of compliance, and so that might result in one compliant inspection, one non-compliant inspection, and it really gives a lot of variability, and it's hard for us to trust the consistent quality coming from those facilities. What we would prefer is for firms to retain a higher state of quality so that even fluctuations would still keep them above a minimum state of compliance. And so for that, we look to the firms to implement that quality culture so that, they can respond to situations that are happening within their facilities.
Drug shortages in the U.S. are at multi-year highs, at the worst that we've seen in 5 years. How much of that is attributed to the compliance issues that we faced in India?
I think there's a large percentage that are due to the non-compliant facilities. As I was mentioning earlier, unfortunately, when there are non-compliances in facilities, actions have to be taken, and a lot of times that is disruptive to the supply chain. FDA has to maintain a high-quality standard, but also seek to retain access to critical therapeutics for our consumers, and so that's a really hard line to balance, especially when there are quality concerns.
Where do you think India ranks globally when it comes to compliance? We have one of the largest number of plants for the U.S. outside of the U.S. Where do we rank globally?
So I think you'll see, globally there's always concerns with quality, but I think in India specifically, we're seeing a high number of facilities that are non-compliant. And as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of that's coming because we're in facilities that were previously non-compliant, so we would expect to see a higher average. But we also would expect and hope that over the 2 years of the pandemic, that some of the corrective actions could have been implemented in a way that would have been more consistent with maintaining a state of quality in the facilities.
What has your experience been for Indian companies which have been issued import alerts? How easy or difficult is it to resolve? And what is the average timeline? And why is it so difficult for a lot of the Indian companies to even get out of that rut? Some of them have import alerts for years.
And let me just say, an import alert is the last resort for the agency. Typically, there have been many interventions that have taken place before an import alert is actually issued for a facility. And the point is not to clear it quickly, but to make sure you're making safe and effective products. And so a lot of times, in order for a company to clear an import alert, it'll necessitate a follow-up inspection. And so as due to COVID, we are experiencing a backlog of inspections. But again, it is our last resort when we find non-compliances, and that means that the agency has already taken steps to try to mitigate the compliance concerns, and that we feel that this is the appropriate measure. So it's always, as I was mentioning, we have to ensure access, but this is really something that agency applies very carefully.
And what about the number of OAIs, or official action indicated? Has the number risen post-COVID, and why do you think so?
So the number has risen post-COVID, and we're seeing that because we're back in the facilities that were previously non-compliant. While we do see quality issues across a range of concerns, through the manufacturing facility itself, it's disappointing to see data integrity resurface as an issue again. And so, for us, data integrity is a critical concern because that throws into doubt any of the data that the firm is presenting to us. And so it really makes us question the ability of that firm to manufacture compliant products.
Talking about data integrity, there have been incidents from India, for example, with contamination of products or substandard products. For example, there's been a case of eye drops in the US and eye ointments, and obviously the cough syrups that we're talking about, DEG contamination and ethylene glycol contamination. How would you read that? How seriously is the US FDA looking into it, and how does one probably stop it?
So I think there's many ways to address these issues. So we are looking at the risk of products. That's always a factor in terms of where we deploy our resources. So obviously anything that's sterile has a much higher risk than other products, and so we really do that does factor into how we do our inspectional work. We also work closely with industry because for us the goal is voluntary compliance. So we do this through inspections, of course, and then we also do this through our capacity building. And so this year alone in India we're looking at maybe reaching over 5,000 different stakeholders by the end of the year through various conferences and efforts to increase quality and ensure that industry is aware of our regulatory expectations.